Okay, so high school football just started in the area, and there was someone in the poker room who told us about a bet he had on a high school football game. He bet someone else who's in the poker room a lot. So, great question. How do you come up with a spread for a high school football game? Well, they just came up with it on their own. So the guy who was looking for someone to bet, let's call him Mr. A, he approached the other guy, and they eventually came up with a 10-point spread. Mr. A is getting 10 points. So he seems to have way more information about all this, and somehow he talked Mr. B into giving him 10 points. So Mr. A got the bet he was looking for on a high school football game, and he's getting the underdog with 10 points. So eventually we're playing. This was Friday night. I'm playing in there. I was on table 9, and Mr. B is at the table, and he's asking us if we can look up the score. Well, it's not a game that's on ESPN, but a guy at the table does know of a website where he thinks they put up the scores of the high school football games in the area. So he goes to that website on his phone, and he sees that it's in progress, but it won't say the score, like we're all accustomed to ESPN, like CBS Sports and stuff like that. It won't say the score until there's a final, which someone made a joke about putting in live bets, so that was good. But I knew Mr. B was actually at the game, so I asked, Mr. A was, so I asked Mr. B, who's in the room, who has the favorite giving 10 points, I asked him, why don't you just text the guy, he's at the game? And he goes, oh, that's too much work. I was like, isn't that like the simplest thing possible? So the guy who was on his phone trying to look up the score, and all he could see is the fact that the game is in progress, he says, oh, you know what, my nephew used to go to one of those schools. He might be at the game, or he might know someone who's at the game. Let me ask him if he knows the score of this. So Mr. B says, all right, good idea. Yeah, do that. So I say, this is simpler than just texting the guy you know is at the game. You're asking the guy in the 8th seat to text his nephew to text someone else who might be at the game and might know the score, and he's going to text back the nephew, text back this guy, and then he's going to tell us this is the much simpler method. And Mr. B says, it's simpler for me. I'm not doing anything. So eventually, this all worked somehow. The nephew was either at the game or knew someone and texted the 8th seat back. It was 21-21 late in the 3rd quarter. So as soon as we hear that score, it sounds like Mr. B got scammed into this bet that he knew nothing about. He couldn't name anyone on either team, and wound up taking the favorite, giving 10 points, where it looks like it's going to be a real close game. So eventually the game ended. Mr. B's team won, but by a point. Didn't come close to covering the spread. And if you're wondering, it sounds like the underdog scored very late and went for 2 and lost. It was a 1-point game. So that was just, that was fun the entire time. Everyone was at the table. The 8th seat was trying to get the score. Mr. B was wondering what the score was. I was making it more entertaining, and other guys at the table were having a good time that this was even a thing. And as long as I'm talking about all those guys, time to give some shout outs here. Actually, the guy on my left who was enjoying all of this used to be in a cult, so we'll just call him Cult Guy. I have a lot of questions about cults, by the way, so anytime we're at the same table, I love asking him questions. Also, guy who's always wearing the Bears hat. We spoke briefly like 2 weeks ago. I don't know your name. We weren't at the same table. That's why it was brief. But I've seen you here in the past few years a lot. Jamie's been playing a lot since I got here. Jamie called me a famous vlogger. I definitely agree with half of those words. Also met Steven again. Met Steven last year. Jets fan Steven. Ben also. Josh. Played with Josh a lot last summer. He's only been in here once this year. Works at Sonic. I remember last year he always came in his uniform. And one correction on a shout out I need to give. I mentioned in a previous video a shout out to Orlando. So when I meet people, I write a note down in my phone, maybe someone's name, maybe where he's from, maybe something we talked about, so I remember later when I film days later and give shout outs. I couldn't make sense of the note. I called the guy Orlando in a previous video. He's from Orlando. His name is John. We met at Trooper Thursday at the Westgate. The final Thursday before I left Vegas and came here to Council Bluffs. So correction, it all occurred to me days after I filmed and called you Orlando in a video, but shout out to John. And I think that's about it. Actually, couple days ago, Steven and I were at the same table, and there was this fun Lithuanian guy at the table also, who we didn't know he was Lithuanian for a while. But he's talking in pretty good English, and I guessed where his accent was from. I guessed Sweden, and he tells me, no, not Sweden, it's like 100 miles away from Sweden. So I guess Finland, and he says, no, Finland is 0 miles away, they share a border. I said, all right, Norway. He goes, no, Norway is 0 miles away, they share a border. It's like over there. He keeps saying over there. Well, over there isn't really helping me. We don't have a map, and that's not like my best area of the world as far as my geography expertise goes. So he keeps saying over there, and I said, well, that's not really gonna help me. And he goes, well, across the Baltic Sea. And I guessed Wales, which wasn't a great guess just from the way he was talking, but I thought it was like that part of the world. It wasn't Wales. And he keeps pointing at the table, and he says like, you're guessing here. It needs to be here. And I said, he did this a lot. He was pointing at the table as if we had a map on the table. We didn't. And eventually I said, you know, if I knew the answer, I would know. I don't know, and you pointing at the table isn't helping me at all. So eventually I gave up, and it was Lithuania, which I actually didn't think his accent really sounded like that, because I don't know. I guess maybe it is. I don't know. But then, of course, we talked about famous Lithuanian people. Tony G from the poker world. Zydrunas Zaviskis, world's strongest man. I don't remember what years, but he did it. And, of course, Arvydas Sabonis, former Trailblazers great. Of course, his son, current Kings great. And that was fun. So there. Couple stories, a lot of shout-outs. It's been a lot of fun here at the Horseshoe Council Bluffs so far. And I have like 3 weeks or so left. So expect some more stories. And hopefully people are watching the videos. Hopefully some more shout-outs from some people I meet. And remember, rice is a spoon food.